Hello. Well, in this film I'm going to be stamping leather. Now, by stamping leather I mean putting patterns into leather. And I'm going to be making a birthday present actually for my sister. Now, she does a bit of lino cutting where you engrave into lino and then do block printing with it. Well, she has these little lino tools and they need a home, so I'm going to make a little leather sort of pocket for them and do a little bit of stamping on the cover of it all. Very easy, but you do need veg tan leather for stamping. Well, I've got a couple of squares of the blue leather here, so I'm going to use that. I'm just shaping the veg tan leather at the moment, so I'm using a belt end cutter just to get a couple of rounded ends. Right, there we are, that's my strip of leather that I wanted, so I can now get patterning on this. I'm going to put a name along here to start with, and really just a couple of tips. I'm using these little metal stamps, but it is worth sort of working out your space before you start stamping so you get a roughly equal distance at each end. And the other little thing is it's worthwhile very faintly just doing, so that's my start point, marking the start point. If you do it very faintly it won't show. Hardly see now, and I had a faint line I was doing here, it is. It's worth just doing a little base line just with a little pointy tool, and like that you can get your stamps or your name a bit more straight. Just makes it help it look a bit better really. Well, the first thing to do is dampen off your leather. Once the leather's dampened off, you can start your stamping. You let it dry a little bit, it soon comes through. By damping it makes the leather impressions actually stick. They probably still would stick actually if you didn't damp it, they just wouldn't stick as well. There we are, so just a nice little wetting all over with a sponge and a bit of water. You don't want to soak it, it's just a matter of getting it so there's a bit of moisture underneath. So there you are. Let that dry off for a minute or two. Once the leather's gone a little bit lighter, you know it's sort of dry enough to start stamping. I'll show you the stamping, how to stamp letters first of all. I have actually just filmed a section stamping letters, and I think my camera moved on the tripod, or I didn't set it up right because it's a bit out of view, so I have done it. But I will talk you through very quickly how one does it. So these are little stamps, a little stamp for each letter. They click on to a little shaft, and you get these from leather suppliers. And the idea is if you score a little line, I've done this line a bit firmer on this one, but there's a line there. If you just score it very lightly, you do want your leather to have been soaked. Oops, not quite that much. You want to dampen off your leather basically, let it dry a little bit. And then you can place your stamp on and give it a tap, and there you get a letter. Now these letters are actually self-spacing, so you can actually get them nicely lined up. So that's the next one. So lining up my line, I've just scratched on the leather, got them side by side. Hey presto, see another letter. So that's how they work. Very easy actually. And these little stamps have a little letter, guide letter underneath there, just so you can make sure you've got the right way up. Because it would be very easy to have your R upside down or something. There's a little guide mark there just to guide you. But that's the basic idea of the letters. The only thing I do particularly find is if I use a letter like the letter I, because there's not a lot of sort of surface area, you don't need to hit it so hard as the other letters. So if I can find the I will show you what I mean. Here's the I. Right. Pop it on the little thing. I should really be spacing out the letter beside it, but let's just show you just to demonstrate. If I hit this fairly gently, so that's not so hard as the other ones, it comes out about right. if I hit it hard, same as the others, it comes out far too dominant and just looks a bit funny. So you do need to try and get the pressure fairly uniform so that it looks nice. Anyway, if you get it broadly right, you end up with that, which is quite nice, I think. Personalises a gift. Here are a couple more helpful tips. In terms of soaking the leather prior to stamping, I mean, just to show you the difference in soakings, this piece of leather hasn't been soaked at all, and the stamping is actually quite faint. For all of these I use one of these little wheels, little marked wheels. The next one down, I soaked the leather, but I only soaked the surface, and I didn't give water time to sink down to the lower level of the leather. And it's better, it's a bit more defined, but where it really works well is where I've soaked the leather and I've given it enough time for the water to sort of sink down and for the leather to sort of go dry on the surface again. So I've given that a few minutes before doing the stamping, and that design is so much more prominent. So moral is soak your stuff and let it sink down a bit until the surface goes a slightly lighter colour, then you know it's damp down below. Another little tip I just wanted to give actually concerns stamping, to make sure if you don't get the stamp jumping. So these two stamps here, which I've done on a couple of little leather purses I've made, are quite nicely defined. But there is a risk when you use a stamp that the stamp sort of slightly bounces as you hit it with a hammer, and then it gives you like a double stamp. Now, the way I avoid that personally is I use one of my blacksmithing anvil tools, as it's a lovely big heavy chunk of metal, and I put the leather onto that and then I stamp it with the stamp. And if I have this placed on my concrete far half, I don't seem to get any bounce, but it's just worth experimenting, because you'll find on something, say like a wooden table, it may bounce a bit and you get like a secondary impression. You don't end up with a nice clear stamp. So a nice big metal mass like this soaks up the impact and gives you a nice crisp stamp. So, well, helps a bit. Well, I'm now going to score a couple of very faint lines, and I'm doing that so I can get the next lot of stamps to sit in about the right position. So I'm just going to score along here very lightly. Right, now my next stamps, I've got a couple of little metal ones here. One's like a flower head and the other one's a bit of a star. I don't know where these came from actually. I noticed they've got the William Marples symbol on them, so I assume they came from the Marples factory, and I'm not certain of what they were for, but they're quite nice little ones. I'm going to use these little pair of dividers here to actually just space out where these stamps are going. So I'm just going to walk them down the leather. So just walking them down, trying not to press too hard, but it's just enough to give me a nice little spacing dot. And then I can aim for that dot with my stamp, and it gives a nice even spacing. Right, having got my little spaces marked out now on the leather, I'm going to use a little, well, it's like a flower head stamp here. I'm going to do every other one with this stamp. So I just place it on, knock it in, place it on, knock it in, and so on. Just go down here, every other one. So I've now got a little star stamp here, which I'm going to use next. So I'm just going to go in between my other stamps. And I mean, these stamps, once you've done this, they'll remain. They don't sort of disappear as the leather dries out. They actually remain nicely embedded in it. So it's quite a nice simple way of getting your personal design onto a bit of leather. So there you are, that's my stamps done, and there's enough space now to get my stitching around the edge. Yeah, well, I have just shortened that a little bit, just want to make that a little bit smaller. I think that will now go on to my bit of leather a bit more happily as well, actually. Yeah, allowing for seam allowances. That looks about right. So what I'm going to do now is glue this to the leather. So I'm just using a bit of leather glue. It's a bit like PVA glue, actually. Don't really need very much. This will just hold it in position while I'm sort of stitching. And just stop it sort of puckering, getting caught and getting in the wrong place. So I think let's do it by eye and just work out. I've got a seam allowance for the top, seam allowance for the bottom. I think I'll just put it in the middle. Oops, if I can let go of it and try not to bruise the leather too much. It's about fair, looks about right. So I'll just weight that down with my little tin of punches and hold it there. I picked up a few of these old little punches. They're quite nice, all different shapes. I've got triangles, little dots, round circles, hearts, clubs. All in there, quite good fun. Anyway, weight that down. Glue dries very quickly, it won't take long. And then I can get on with the sewing. While that's just drying, I'll just show you a couple of other stamps. I mean, here's a horse stamp, a Celtic stamp, and you can get lots of stamps actually in this Celtic range. But they all impress little designs on the leather. I've got a little stag fair, and then you get individual little hand stamps. So the range is endless. If you just Google one of the leather suppliers like Tandy, you'll see lots of different stamps are available and quite good fun. You can also do freehand carving on veg tan leather, which is very nice, and I'll put up a film at some point about making axe covers and doing a bit of carving on those. But, anyway, I'll show you a little bit of the sewing, but as I say, this film was really about basically stamping designs. So I hope you found it useful seeing that little design and seeing how simple it is once you've got a veg tan leather to stamp something on it. And it does make it, as I say, quite a nice little personal thing. Well, to sew around this, I'm going to use my patcher machine, which is quite nice for a job like this, as you can control it quite well as you go along. And you can take your time. Doing the ends is a little bit tricky, as you have to steer it round a bit of a curve. Again, you just take your time. Try and steer while the needle is down if you can. And what I'll do, I'll go slightly past my starting point and then pull the threads through to the back to knot them, and like that I don't get a nasty knot on the front. So let's get that thread slightly pulled out to one side. Right, and one thread over. Right, bring her up, lift the foot, whoops, there we are, and pull her out. I'm now going to pull my blue threads through from the front so I can knot them at the back. So I just give the black threads, I've done it in two colours because it's easier then to see, a little pull. It brings up the blue thread, and I can then hopefully, my seam unpicker, gently lift it up. There it comes. That's one blue thread through, and there's one more just here. Same idea. There we are. So all my threads are through now, you see, and then I can knot those together on the back. So that gives a nice neat finish on the front. I'm on my Singer 201K at the moment, and I'm just going to set a zip in to the bag. So I'll set the zip in first and then sew the bag bits together. And I'm using a zipper foot, so these are very good because you can get right up to the edge of a zip. And they're sort of like left and right hand, so this little foot can slide over either way. So as I'm coming down this side of the zip, I'll be on that side of the foot. When I go down the other, I can just slide it over this little thumb screw and go down the other side of the zip. and I'm using little clamps as before to hold the leather because I can't really pin it being leather. So that's the zip set in, so I can now get on and make the rest of the bag. I'm just sewing the bag up now, and I'm on my big machine, my Singer 133K, so get this done. You do it once and you never do it again. Make sure the zip is open. The bag's inside out at the moment. Got the zip open. I once did one of these early on and I didn't have the zip open, so I sewed it all around and of course couldn't undo it. It was a hell of a job. But anyway, zip's open, so I will get sewing. Well, here's the finished bag and it's all complete now, and the little leather stamping panels on there all stitched on. So that's a bag for lino cutting tools. Anyway, I hope you can see leather stamping gives a bit of interest, makes it a bit more individual. So anyway, thanks for watching and I hope you've enjoyed that one.